Autoimmunity rates are rising the most rapidly in teenagers compared to any other age group, right?
Wow.
It's our adolescents, and mostly autoimmunity is much more common in females too than males.
Welcome to Biohacking with Brittany, where high performance health meets non-toxic living. I'm Brittany Ford, a holistic nutritionist, bringing you science-backed strategies in biohacking, longevity, and holistic wellness. Whether you're navigating fertility, pregnancy, postpartum, or simply striving for optimal well-being, you're in the right place. Let's dive in. Welcome to Biohacking with Brittany. Thank you for tuning into today's episode. This is a place where I talk about health and wellness and everything along those lines. And today I had the privilege of sitting down with Dr. Elisa Song, who is a holistic pediatrician. She has a wealth of knowledge, and we really dove into the gut microbiome for both parents and baby. We talk about the different types of bacteria, viruses, what that can mean for the microbiome and how that can show up with a baby, with kids' health in terms of signs and symptoms, and the different ways that you can actually heal through it. So I talk about getting myself tested, my husband tested, and my baby tested, what our results said, and we got tested through Tiny Health, which I will link in the show notes for everybody to find easily if you want to test yourself. And the different probiotics and the different things that I have been taking for us and for everyone in my family on really how to optimize our gut health in relation to our results. Above and beyond that, we talk about baby acne, eczema. I think we talk about colic. We talk about measles and vaccines. And we kind of get into really how we can just support kids from a holistic standpoint, which is super important. And we need more and more in our society, in our world today. We talk about her book, Healthy Kids, Happy Kids, which is a phenomenal resource for anybody. Essentially, you can go to it and you can look up any type of health issue that your kid might be having. And there is a full treatment plan or protocol of both conventional health and medicine and also alternative or complementary or holistic as well. So it's a great resource. I love looking at it if I have some sort of concern or question and really understanding what I can do from both sides of the spectrum. So this episode is packed with information. I think you are going to learn a lot. Thank you for everyone who's joining me on YouTube now. We're doing video. We are finally optimized for video in my office, as you can see behind me. And if you're joining on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, we appreciate you listening as well. Before we start this episode, a shout out to Lila Quantum Tech. And they have come out with EMF blocking underwear. I'm actually holding a pair of it for those just listening. I'm holding a pair of it here on camera. And you can see that actually in the fabric, let me just hold this up to the camera. Oh, is that going to focus? There we go. You can see that it's actually got silver woven into it. Now, the silver is actually what blocks the EMF from going through, blocks the radiation from going through and hitting your reproductive parts, especially your ovaries, where your eggs are kept. So I wear this when I work at my computer. I wear this if I have my phone in my pocket, which I try not to do. And especially when I was going through fertility and pregnancy, this type of product was super important to me and something that I wish I had. I had to do kind of like a workaround and use a blanket and other things because these hadn't come out yet. So I strongly suggest if you are optimizing your fertility and optimizing your ovaries, your egg health, your menstrual cycle, get a pair of these EMF blocking underwear from Lila Quantum Tech. I love them. These are the cheeky ones you can see here. Literally, of course, they're very cheeky. But yeah, I love them and I use them all of the time. And they should be a staple in every single woman's wardrobe. You can use my discount code BiohackingBrittany in all capitals. It will get you 10% off of all of their products, which I have multiple of. And I strongly suggest them. And then a shout out to Bioptimizers. I love Bioptimizers. I have been using Bioptimizer supplements probably for like 3 years, and they have a mushroom breakthrough powder. This is phenomenal. I actually have it every afternoon. I call it my mushroom milk. And essentially, you add it to almond milk or coconut milk or whatever you're drinking. And it's got 4 different types of mushrooms in it. Really helps with brain fog. If you have mom brain, you're forgetting things all the time and you're balancing so much, it can really help just give clarity and cut through the noise, especially in the afternoon when you want to get stuff done. So functional mushrooms is just like a whole world that we're slowly tapping into. And I love this mushroom breakthrough powder. They also have great flavors: chocolate, chai, and salted caramel. Sign me up. So good. I make some for my husband as well. He works in tech and he works online from home. So I always take him some mushroom milk every afternoon as well. So check that out. You can use my discount code again, Biohacking Brittany, and it will save you on all of their supplements, including this one, but also their magnesium, probiotics, digestive enzymes, things like that. I will link it to the show notes and on my website for you. Enjoy this podcast episode. I think you're going to learn a lot, and I will catch you soon for another one. Welcome to Biohacking with Brittany. I am thrilled that you are listening today, and I am so excited about this episode. I am joined by holistic pediatric expert, we will say, an author who wrote the book Healthy Kids, Happy Kids, which I love. And this has been sitting on my nightstand for the last few months, and I have been going through it. And I am joined by Dr. Elisa Song, who is the founder of her practice, Whole Family Wellness, which we're also going to dive into. And today I'm going to pick her brain about how to raise a healthy child in today's society. A couple of questions about babies, kids, maybe even the latest measles outbreak that's happening in the States, and a couple of other things like that. So, Dr. Elisa, welcome to the show.
Oh, thanks so much for having me. It's an honor. I love talking to moms to be, current moms. Just this is where health starts. And I tell my colleagues who are in the longevity biohacking space, if we can get our kids on the right track from I would say even before they're born, but from the moment that they're born, then we can hopefully help prevent the need for having them to biohack in the future. So I love talking about this.
Yeah, absolutely. I am a big advocate for preconception health, and how do mom and dad to be become as healthy as they can be before even conceiving? Because I'm sure, as you know, there's actually a lot you can do to kind of mitigate all of that. But before we dive into that, I'm so curious about your background and your history. Why the focus on healing and holistic health in this pediatric space?
I actually started my pediatric career wanting to do more integrative, holistic, functional work. I didn't know the name for it at the time, right? Because I did my pediatric residency, medical school. This is now in the early 90s. So probably when a lot of listeners are just being born. But back then I was like, I really, really want to do something more. It was called alternative medicine back then, right? I mean, now we call it integrative. But, when I was an undergrad at Stanford, not knowing what I wanted to do, the only thing I did know was that I wanted to work with children. I mean, I loved being with children, supporting children, working with children. So I thought maybe I'd be a teacher. I actually was going to go to law school and be a children's rights advocate, and, be on Capitol Hill fighting for kids' rights. And then I stumbled across this flyer of the American Holistic Medical Association. And this was back again, probably 1991. And my mind was totally blown because I'd never seen anything but conventional medicine. And I heard from people who were just starting to get known in the field, like Deepak Chopra and Andrew Weil and Joan Borisenko. And it was at that point where I realized, okay, I could do pediatrics, I could do medicine, but this way. And so it's really informed every part of my path. And so even during medical school and residency, really, I was kind of out there. It's one of the only people I was saying, I want to talk about, help support parents through vaccine discussions, give them
Mhm.
options besides just antibiotics, or be able to refer to colleagues who are, practicing chiropractic or acupuncture and, really create a whole child approach. So I
Yeah.
wouldn't practice any other way.
Yeah, I love that. And good for you for being such an advocate for it from the get-go. Like when it wasn't cool or popular or trendy, kind of like it is now, you were at the forefront and that really says something. Um, in your practice day to day when you're working with clients, like how have you seen the discussions change now that it's something that is way more common? Like, is it easier for you to kind of get people more on board than it was back then?
Not necessarily for my practice, because when I opened up my practice in 2004, it was as an integrative functional medicine pediatric practice. So the parents who were coming to me already knew that they wanted something different for their kids. They wanted an MD, a pediatrician who had that knowledge, who could say, "Hey, look, this is the time when maybe medical interventions or antibiotics are really needed." But we know that that's really far and few between. I mean, most kids, when they're sick, it's with viral illnesses and they don't need antibiotics. So having that choice, right? Having that integrated background. And so I will say the conversation that has changed the most is with my pediatrician colleagues,
Hmm.
right? And that's been something that's been so, I just uplifting and really, makes the last 20 years seem worthwhile, that I think things are going to shift, not just right now in this current, political
Yeah.
climate, but the conversation needs to shift from the inside out. And, when I have, top academic centers like UCLA or UCSD or Cleveland Clinic calling me and asking me to give lectures to their medical students and residents and saying, "Hey, I love your book." There's this one program, a doctorate of nurse practitioner in Minnesota, and they're making my book required reading for their students. I mean, that's how we get change. Yes, the current healthcare system must change, but it's not just about slashing and burning and
Yeah.
really criticizing all of the practitioners who are in that system, because I don't know a single pediatrician who went into pediatrics thinking, I actually want to cause my children harm,
Yeah.
right? I mean, they went into it thinking, I'm going to help. I want it. And the only tools they have were the conventional tools. But now, as we can get to the younger students, and even, I mean, with A4M, I host an annual pediatric practitioner functional pediatric symposium every year. This is our fourth year doing it. And last year I had this doctor who was pediatrician who was close to retirement. I mean, he was in his 60s, and he came to the conference, and he came up to me during the break with tears like in his eyes, and he was really agitated. I'm like, "Oh my God, what's going on?" Right?
Mhm.
Just, he looked at me and said, I don't know what to think. I'm so grateful that my eyes are open now. And yet I think back on, the 40 years that I've been practicing, and I wish I had known this.
Yeah.
Right. And so, but here's the thing. We know things when we know them, even as a mom, right? There's so many things
Yeah.
that I wish, even as my kids now are 15 and 13, I wish I had known when they were
Yeah.
young, but we can't go back and change that. But now we have our eyes open, and I have a lot of hope for the future. It's going to be slow. It's going to take time, but we are in a moment where I think, because these conversations are not as, um, what's the right word? As not even taboo, but like there is a shift that I'm feeling,
Mhm.
even among conventional pediatricians.
Mhm. That's amazing. I'm so glad to hear that. Like that gives me hope for my future, for my future of my kids. Um yeah, because it just feels like there's less resistance when we're kind of like going through this battle or climbing up this mountain, and there's more people kind of on our side and more people making these informed decisions to be healthier, which I think is the most important thing really at the end of the day. Um when you have clients and kids coming into your office, babies, whatever age they are, what are the common ailments that you're seeing today? And is it any different than when you first opened your practice in the beginning of the 2000s? Let's have a quick real talk about something many of us don't think about enough. protecting our reproductive health from EMFs. EMFs, which are electromagnetic fields, are around us everywhere, from our phones to Wi-Fi, 5G towers, and even household electronics. But did you know that EMFs can impact sensitive areas of the body, including your ovaries? As women, protecting this vital part of our health is so important, especially if you are planning for your future, thinking about fertility, or maybe any other health issues or concerns you have with your ovaries. That's where Lila Quantum Tech's women's underwear comes in. This is no ordinary underwear, okay? It's infused with pure quantum energy and woven with silver fibers to block over 99% of measurable radiation, including 3G, 4G, and 5G signals. It's like giving your body and your ovaries a protective shield against harmful EMFs while staying comfortable and stylish. Lila Quantum Tech has created something truly special. Durable antimicrobial underwear designed with your health and well-being in mind. Whether you prefer brief or bikini style, these are an absolute must for anyone looking to prioritize their reproductive health, which I know so many of us are. And here's the best part. You can get 2 pairs for $77 or 4 pairs for $149. And if you use my discount code BiohackingBrittany, you actually get a 10% discount on top of that bundle deal. So seriously use it so you can save. Your health is worth it. Head to the link in my bio, on my show notes, on my website, and start to protect yourself today, starting from the inside out. Lila Quantum Tech, science meets self-care for every single part of you.
Yeah, I would say yes and no, because my practice, because it was it was one of the first integrated practices in the country. And so when I opened up, just almost shockingly, like flooded right away with families who are like, oh my gosh, I can't believe there's a practice like this. And, my kids, at first I had, quickly growing population of patients with autism. And that I wasn't prepared for, right? In the sense that I had, I had taken the functional medicine courses at that time. There was a Defeat Autism Now consortium and educational platform. And I went to the DAN conferences. I was a DAN doctor. It's no longer called DAN. If you talk to someone who's been around like me, we all remember that, DAN was amazing for the education, but they had to stop using that name because it was actually trademarked by the Divers Alert Network. So it moves. It's no longer called Dan. I could no longer say I'm a Dan doctor, but practicing a biomedical approach to autism. And, I went to UCSF residency, which is, a tertiary coordinary care system. We see the sickest of the sick. And I remember this would have been in maybe 1998 to 1999. I did my developmental pediatrics rotation.
Mm-hmm.
I distinctly remember being told by my attending physician, who told me that if I saw a handful of kids with autism in my lifetime, that would be a lot. A handful, right? We saw one child with autism in the clinic. And so that was in 2000. I opened up my practice in 2004, and I could not believe, that my practice quickly almost became like 90% kids on the spectrum, with parents who were hearing that a biomedical functional medicine approach could help their child's symptoms, could help the aggression and the language, and just, help kind of unblock what was going on in their minds. And so, so that was really eye-opening, that, the recognition that parents, who are trying to find another approach for their kids with ADHD or anxiety or autoimmune illness, they're not necessarily going to their conventional pediatricians asking for that help, right? And so when I was able to offer this, what's shifted now is, many more kids with autoimmunity. We know that, autoimmunity rates are rising the most rapidly in teenagers compared to any other age group, right?
Wow.
It's our adolescents, and mostly, autoimmunity is much more common in females too than males. So our teenage girls, the number of girls who have, at 12, 13 have positive Hashimoto's antibodies. And I'm checking, right? It's because I'm checking. Not everyone is checking routinely, right? But I want to know when the antibodies start to form, like an ANA, anti-nuclear antibody, you can have those positive antibodies for sometimes decades before you ever start to quote feel sick. You know, have clinical
Mm.
symptoms. So for me, when I find a positive ANA or positive thyroglobulin or thyroid peroxidase antibody in a kid or a teenager, that to me is an amazing opportunity, right? There's this canary in the coal mine saying, "Hey, my immune system's not happy," but they don't have symptoms yet or don't have major symptoms. So why not try to reverse those antibodies then, as opposed to waiting till your 20s or 30s or 40s, and all of a sudden you can't get pregnant, your hair is falling out, you have no energy, you're depressed, you're anxious, right? Why wait till that point? And so autoimmunity, I'm seeing more of. Another phenomena that I had never seen in residency was PANS pandis, this autoimmune neuropsychiatric disorder that develops after strep. And the severity of symptoms is increasing. I mean, we know that 1 in 5 kids is eczema, but kids with eczema who are being lathered head to toe with steroid creams, stronger and stronger, almost chemotherapeutic oral medications, IV antibiotics and steroids because their eczema is so severe. So we're having more kids with chronic health issues, and the severity is increasing too.
Wow. Wow. I'm very shocked by some of the things that you're saying. Just going back to the autoimmunity showing up in teenagers, that, yeah, I need to digest that and actually think about that. Like, what do you think is the root cause behind that? Do you think it's a combination of factors in terms of like lifestyle, diet, and stress? Like, why suddenly the increase?
So, in functional medicine, that's where really the term root cause medicine, came to the forefront. And it really helped practitioners and patients understand that we need to dig a little deeper under the surface to see what's going on. One of the things, though, that I feel like we need to shift away from is thinking that that there can be just one cause,
Mhm.
right? Because for most people, there is not just one root cause. There are many things that laid the groundwork for having this dysfunction, and then there might be that one thing that was, the straw that broke the camel's back,
Right.
right? And you think, oh, it was the mono infection or it was the tick bite, and that's what did it. Well, it's not so simple because for some kids, in fact, most kids and teenagers, you can get mono and never ever have problems or symptoms, but some people go on to having problems or strep, and so with this autoimmunity, this immune dysfunction that we're seeing, I do think, and the reason why I wrote the book is I do think we can really tie it all back to how our kids' microbiomes are developing, even from when they're inside their mama's bellies. What kind of a microbiome are our babies starting out with in life, and how are their microbiomes shifting? And in fact, we know that there's one family of microbes called Bifidobacteria, which many of your audience, is familiar with. But there are many, many different kinds of Bifidobacteria, and there are infant Bifidobacteria species that are being lost. I mean, our kids are really very, very low in this important Bifidobacteria, which from the moment they're born interacts with our outside world and tells their immune systems how to react. Are they going to create inflammation? Are they going to stay calm? Are they going to develop food allergies? And so, and then as we go through the stages of life, we see so many factors that continue to disrupt the microbiome, from what they're eating. I have to say, even, the healthiest of foods, I've had, moms who are health coaches and practitioners and just shocked when they really take a look at what they're eating and take note of it and realize, I was actually inadvertently feeding my kids things that were disrupting their microbiomes without even realizing it.
Yeah. I mean, it's almost impossible to avoid, to be honest. Like, unless you are like living on an organic farm and it's exactly farmed to your table and you're controlling every single aspect. I even just listened to a podcast that talked about all the microplastics found in food. and in foods sold in places like Whole Foods, like things that you would think, oh, this is so healthy, the microplastic levels were actually scary high. And so kind of like begs this question of like, there's only so much we can do. But I want to ask about the bifidobacteria that you talked about for the babies. Is that B. infantis that you're talking about? That is the one that relates with the outside world, or which one are you specifically referring to?
Yeah, I mean, there are several different Bifidobacteria strains, and then B. infantis. Even within B. infantis, there are different subspecies,
Mm-hmm.
right? But B. infantis, I mean, you imagine infantis, it's because we should find these in adults, right? Um, Brittany, I'm just going to pause for a second. I don't see on my end the line moving when I'm talking.
Oh, it's moving
Do you
on
see
my
that?
side.
Okay, good, 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 good.
Yeah.
Okay. I just want to make sure I'm like, are we not recording? Okay. All right. Um, so B. infantis and also many different B. infantis species, subspecies,
Mhm.
are predominantly found in infants. You can still find them in adults too, but we also have a B. Bifidobacteria adolescentis, right, in
Mm.
adolescence, right? I mean, and
Hmm.
the fascinating thing with Bifidobacteria is for babies in the 0 to maybe 2 year mark, at which point the microbiome takes on a more adult-like pattern. When it's in for infants, their microbiome should be composed of almost 80 to even 100% Bifidobacteria species. The vast majority should be Bifidobacteria versus as an adult, even as an adult, our levels will shift. And so, a young adult may have maybe 10 to 15% Bifidobacteria versus an older adult or a perimenopausal woman, it may be appropriate to have 7.5 to 10% Bifidobacteria. So we're not quite there yet, but we're getting closer and closer to the time where we really will have more precision microbiome analysis, because male and female microbiomes are different once puberty sets in. Our microbiomes, depending on our age, will also differ, right? I mean, a postmenopausal woman's microbiome is going to be very different than her, 20-year-old microbiome. So the Bifidobacteria, we know when Bifidobacteria levels are healthy, it allows the developing immune system of your baby to build tolerance to the outside world, right? It doesn't look at everything as a foreign invader to attack, create anaphylaxis or hives or eczema. So, because if you imagine our bodies are one long hollow tube, and our insides that we think of as our gut, right, from our mouth all the way down to where the poop comes out, that's actually we're exposed to the outside world through that. It's one of our largest interfaces with our outside world, with the foods we eat, the toxins that are getting breathed in or swallowed, microbes that are also getting into us in that way. And so our gut microbiome, which houses 80+% of our immune system, and the microbes in our microbiome interact with those pathogens and food particles and environmental toxins, and lets our immune system know, okay, this is how we should react to this. This is what we should do with that. And if that immune training doesn't happen properly when our kids are babies, they can be more at risk for things like eczema or asthma or allergies and food allergies. But the same thing can happen as adults. I have moms in my practice who could eat anything, and then all of a sudden in their 20s or their 30s, they can't eat. They're anaphylactic to shrimp, or they can't eat X, Y, and Z anymore, and they're developing all of these not just even food sensitivities, but outright allergies.
Mhm.
And we also see in adults too, this loss of bifidobacter plays an important role in how our immune system functions.
Yeah. Yeah, I love this. I just had our whole family's microbiome tested through a company called Tiny Health. I don't know if you know them. Yeah.
Well, I have to. I'm gonna be honest. I'm their chief medical officer, so that is the microbiome test for that I think for all ages should happen, because they do
Yeah.
have infant and child specific
Yes.
ranges, adult specific ranges. They also have fascinating markers. I mean, they're constantly adding new markers, but I can look at a child's microbiome or a parent's microbiome and see how much GABA their microbes can produce.
Mm.
In this day and age where anxiety is one of the number one health concerns,
Yeah.
we need our GABA. And if our microbiota in our gut don't make enough GABA for us, it doesn't matter what we try to do. We need to have more GABA to support calm and sleep and focus and all of that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's fascinating. And I learned a lot when we did that test. We just got our results back last week. So I did a deep dive
Oh,
into
yeah.
all of our microbiomes in the house and found out that I have an overgrowth of the staph bacteria, the
Yeah.
disruptive staph bacteria. And it is releasing the endotoxin A, which creates like gaps in skin adhesions and creates like skin issues. And I've been having skin issues for the last few years, and I thought it was eczema. And I don't think it's eczema anymore. I think it is actually related to this overgrowth of this bacteria. But fascinating. Yeah, we don't have to go fully into all of that, but so worth it if you think that you have any bacterial, or even for your kid, like getting them tested if they have eczema or if they have these issues. It provides insight into what actually could be causing it. And then you can kind of make more informed decisions from there.
Yeah. Yeah. Or even if you have, let's say, a family history of eczema, or maybe your first child has food allergies,
Yeah.
or if you have a family history of autoimmunity, it can just help to look and see, does my child have the microbes that increase the risk for eczema, asthma, autoimmunity, anxiety, whatever it is, so that you can be more proactive about it? Because as parents, that's what we want to do. I mean, we want to give our kids the best chance of. And as you said, when we look at our modern world, pretty much everything is disruptive, right? And you can
Yeah.
feel it can almost paralyze you, which is not the way to live, because that fear is so inflammatory. And understanding that, it's not so much, yes, it's trying to minimize that disruption, but some disruption is inevitable. I mean, forever chemicals are everywhere, right? So the key is creating that foundation of resilience in your microbiome, so that no matter what happens on a day-to-day basis, your child's microbiome can bounce right back. I mean, your
Yeah.
microbiome actually wants to go back to the state it was in before the
Mhm.
disruption. So if we make sure it's a really healthy state, then we know, okay, once they're starting, I mean, your child isn't in preschool yet, or the blue frosted cupcake birthday stage yet, but that'll happen. And when that
Yeah.
happens, we don't want to, f- flip out that, oh my gosh, that there's going to be some permanent damage done from those Skittles, that bowl of Skittles that they, kind of
Yeah.
reach into, right? It's about building that foundation so that even despite those disruptions in life, they can still be healthy.
Lately, we've all been reminded how important it is to stay sharp no matter how old we are. We really can't let the years slow down our mental game. Whether we're 30, 40, 80, we can choose to feel our best. If you've noticed that your brain feels a bit foggy as you age, or even as you're a new mom and you're experiencing mom brain, as they call it is time to clear the mental cobwebs. And I can't think of a better and more delicious way to do it than by having my daily dose of Mushroom Breakthrough from Optimizers. Mushroom Breakthrough packs a powerful punch with 4 cognitive boosting mushrooms: lion's mane, chaga, cordyceps, and reishi, plus collagen for extra brain support. Lion's mane in particular can increase the levels of BDNF, which is a protein that helps brain cells grow. This is crucial for learning and memory, which typically decline as we age. It's kind of like fertilizer for your brain cells. On top of these incredible benefits, it's also delicious and comes in 3 different flavors that all taste amazing. Give Mushroom Breakthrough a try and feel the difference. I have a glass every single day, and you can do the same. Head to bioptimizers.com/Brittany, and you can use my discount code biohackingbrittany, which is in all capitals, to get your Mushroom Breakthrough for 10% off today. Your future self will thank you. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Have you seen in your practice, or just in your experience in general, a kind of commonality between disruptions in the microbiome in family members? Like, I just wonder, and I was thinking about this when I had us all tested. I was thinking, I wonder if any bad bacteria I have, my son will have, and he's breastfed,
Yep.
or vice versa. And then how does that impact my husband, who also lives in the same household as us?
Yeah. we know that family members tend to have more similar microbes than non-family members. When you live in the same, or anyone who lives in the same household. I mean, it makes sense because we're kissing and hugging and touching, and we're sharing germs all the time. And so, if we have disruptive microbes, so for instance, if I'm working with a child and they have gut dysbiosis, maybe an abnormal bowel, not enough of the good bacteria, too much of the abnormal bacteria or yeast or parasites or whatever it is, and I'm working on healing their gut and they get better, but they keep kind of sliding back. And we know diet's really clean and everything else. Then I always think in the back of my mind, okay, is there someone now in the family who has that microbe we're trying to clear,
Yeah.
but doesn't even know it, right? And so, same thing with pandas. If I have a child with strep problems from the strep bacteria, and they keep getting recurrent strep, I want, and it's not necessarily going around the school. I want to check the whole family to see. I mean, I even check pets, right? I check the dog and ask families to bring their dog to the vet and check for strep.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. And when we got tested and I have an overgrowth of the staph bacteria, both my husband and my baby have zero, don't have it at all. And I was actually surprised, especially with my kid. Like, I just figured I breastfeed him multiple times a day. Like, it would impact him, but he doesn't have anything. So I guess that's a good thing. But yeah, I can see how it would impact with just close proximity day in and day out with family members.
Yeah. Well, and breast milk is, it's, just from an evolutionary standpoint, we have to think, okay, what was breast milk designed to do? Of course, it's designed to feed our babies, but breast milk is rich in this prebiotic called human milk oligosaccharides, right? And these HMOs, their only job is to feed bifidobacteria.
Yeah.
So when your child is nursing and getting this rich supply of these HMO prebiotics, and there's some bifidobacteria in their gut, that bifidobacteria is going to take those HMOs and grow and thrive and colonize. So, even when moms have some dysbiosis to work on, breast milk rich in those HMOs is one of the best ways to support your baby's gut microbiome.
Yeah, absolutely. And on that topic, this is like such a specific question, but I'm just thinking through this. So I was a C-section baby, and then I had a C-section with my baby, unfortunately, but it happened. That's okay. And my mom was only able to breastfeed me for a couple of months. And then I had to go to formula because she couldn't breastfeed. And so when I did my test, I expected my B infantis to be quite low because where would I be getting HMOs from? And why would I have an overgrowth of that bacteria? But actually, my result actually said I have quite a good amount of B infantis, but I'm 31 and I don't have breast milk. So like, how does that work? Like, I guess my question is, if I was breastfed for the first few months of my life, would that B infantis cultivate and then still be present today? Or is it not that like long lived if we're talking about like how it colonizes?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. I mean, it could be. I mean, we know that the microbiome set in those early stages, they want to stick, and so it could be that you were colonized even back then, and that's it was so strong that it continued. Despite all of the potential disruptions, through your life. But the other thing too is we don't necessarily have to take a B infantis supplement to have bifidobacteria grow. We know that, for instance, there's a probiotic called Lactobacillus rhamnosus GG, which is one of the most widely studied probiotics in children. You can find it very easily over the counter. It's called Culturelle, right? And it's also found in many, high quality probiotic supplements. So this LGG, Lactobacillus rhamnosus GG, when given to infants without any other supplementation, was found to increase of bifidobacteria levels. So even if, any time in your life you've taken LGG, that can help support. If you have good levels of Akkermansia, that supports the rest of your microbiome, right? So it's not just that you have to take in all these strains. The way I think about your microbiome is if your microbiome is an ecosystem, right? It's just the same as, when we take care of the world around us. If we take care of the world and reduce, reuse, recycle, and all the things, then we keep the world a healthy, happy place that keeps us, healthier and happier. But the same thing with our microbiome. If we support a healthy ecosystem, right? Our microbiome is not just the probiotics, that those are the microorganisms, the microbiota, but in that healthy environment, we're creating a friendly neighborhood, a healthy neighborhood where you have your friendly microbes, but then also anytime you're exposed to another friendly microbe, those microbes say, hey, come on in, join our neighborhood. And also kind of like the neighborhood watch, they keep the less desirables out. And so it's really creating that ecosystem, with the way we live and the way we think and the way we eat, that's going to help support the growth of all of these beneficial flora. So that's awesome that you have great bifido levels. That means, that the environment in your gut is supportive of friendly microbes, even though you have this overgrowth of staph. Now it's, moving down the staph and getting even more friendly bacteria in.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm like, I put myself on my own little protocol, which we don't have to get into, but did a lot of research into it. So it's been very interesting the last couple of weeks. I was thinking about, what was I going to say? I was thinking about what you were saying about B. infantis and just bifidobacteria in general. And the way that I always think about the gut microbiome is kind of this like rainforest is the way that I see it. Like there's so many species and diversity is what makes a healthy microbiome, just like a rainforest. It's got so much diversity to it. And when we take something like an antibiotic, it's like just bombing the rainforest, right? Like it doesn't matter if it's good or bad, it just kills everything. And that's kind of how I explain it to like my family members or like people who aren't really into health or anything like that. So when I had my C-section, I had to get antibiotics during that surgery. Yeah. And when I was talking to the surgeon, I raised my concerns around this and I debated if I should do it or if I should not do it. And ultimately, I decided to take the antibiotics because they said that if I were to get an infection after the birth, then it could impact my ability to breastfeed. And it was more important for me to be able to breastfeed than it was to, I guess, not take the antibiotics. And what they told me, and I'm curious if what your thoughts are on this, is they told me that the antibiotics take up to or about 12 minutes for it to actually work its way through my body, through my placenta, and impact my baby. And after they gave me the antibiotics, they said they would take the baby out within 12 minutes so that he would not be impacted by the antibiotics. Is that what you've heard or understand, or do you think that is not true? I know you might.
That's so interesting. I've never heard it phrased that way.
Okay.
So I suppose, yes, because any medication you're given, not even the antibiotic, let's say the anesthesia, any medication you're given does need to work its way through your bloodstream into the placenta. Yeah. Is that 12 minutes? I don't know. Maybe. But and so yes, the faster the baby is out after you receive medication, the less of the medication the baby will receive. But it's not as simple as that when it comes to microbiome health, because those antibiotics, they're not specific. There's no way they can just kill only the bad stuff, so they'll kill the good bacteria right along with the bad bacteria. So then, as after the antibiotics, so the baby hasn't received any, but the baby has a relatively naive microbiome, right? And they're relying on exposure either through birth or after birth for their microbiomes to colonize. So knowing that, your breast gland microbiome, your gut microbiome, even your skin microbiome may have been impacted, from the antibiotics. It's still that has then an indirect potential effect on the baby, because we want yours and baby's microbiome to be as healthy as possible. So I can see how the surgeons are saying, okay, no, it's not going to impact. Because like even for me, after I had a, natural birth, and I had an IV in, but my OB was fine with me just having it locked, heparin locked. And so, I wasn't on a IV pole. I was walking around, the hospital and able to jump in and out of the shower whenever I wanted to. This was 20 years ago. They were kind of looking at me like I was crazy, but I was like, I'm here, but I don't want to be hooked up. I didn't have to be hooked up to a monitor. So I just had what was called intermittent monitoring. But as soon as Kenzie was born and my blood pressure started to drop and my uterus wasn't clamping down and they were having some trouble with stopping the bleeding, my OB said, look, now's the time that, I do want to give you some Pitocin and, give you some IV fluids. And I said, that's totally fine. She's out now. You can do whatever you want.
Right. Yeah.
But, so yes, the baby's not getting it directly, but then I knew, okay, maybe there's some effects afterwards. Right. So we just now from a functional standpoint, then we can mop that up.
Right.
And I agree with you. I mean, sometimes, there absolutely is a time and a place for antibiotics. I mean,
Totally.
even for women who deliver vaginally and they have group B strep. I mean, I had group B strep with my second baby, not with my first. And so, I mean, Bodhi did, get some antibiotic exposure through that. But I wouldn't have had it any other way. I wouldn't want to risk him developing pneumonia or sepsis or group B strep problems afterwards.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah, I totally agree with you. I think there's a time and place, and just same with C-sections, same thing, right? Like there's a time and place and when they're medically necessary. And what's interesting about the group B test, I actually didn't do it during pregnancy. I opted out of it. And what I read and understood was your bacteria changes so much that if you test positive 1 week, it doesn't necessarily mean that same bacteria will be there during birth. And so it kind of like almost invalidates the test because the microbiome and it just changes so frequently that like, what is the point of even getting tested? And so I kind of took that and did more research and just opted out. Is that kind of like your stance on that, or where do you think?
I mean, I definitely think that the test needs to be done close to delivery. Right. If you had the test done, at 34 weeks and your baby's now 40 weeks, is that really valid? It also depends on how long if your water hasn't broken and the baby comes out, really quickly, there's really not a concern. It's more, if your water's broken and there's now then a lot more potential exposure to outside microbes. Right.
Yeah.
But I have had, at least from my perspective as a pediatrician, and again, I have not been in the nursery for decades now, but I used to work in the nursery, labor and delivery, and on weekends do shifts there. And once the group B strep protocols were implemented, we did have a significantly lower rate of babies who needed workups for, sepsis and fevers and pneumonia and all of that. So, so we just have to weigh that. But I agree with you that the microbiome is dynamically changing, even your vaginal microbiome.
Yeah.
Right? We know that even psychological stress can change mother's vaginal microbiome. And so, doing everything we can. Now that is where doing a vaginal microbiome test now, where we're looking at not just, because group B swabs only look for the bad stuff. What we want to know is how much of the good stuff is even in your vagina. And, that can then set the stage for healthy delivery, healthy vaginal health, decreased bacterial vaginosis and all of that. So, I think, we often don't think of the vaginal microbiome, when we think about microbiomes, but we have microbiomes everywhere. And our vaginal microbiome looks very different than our gut microbiome, as same thing with our skin microbiome. And we have our breast milk glands microbiome, and our eyeballs have their own microbiome. And so eventually we'll figure all of that out and be able to really be more precise in what we're recommending. But there are some really great vaginal health probiotics now that are coming on the market with specific strains for us as women to support our vaginal health.
Yeah. Yeah. I love seeing that. And it's so interesting. Like you said, like there's microbiomes everywhere in the body. And I wonder if we're going to get to a point where you can just test the microbiome everywhere. And like, this is what the research says is good bacteria. This is bad bacteria. I heard on a podcast recently, someone was talking about our eyelash microbiome. And I was like, wow.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, of course, everything has its own ecosystem. It's like Horton Hears a Who, right? There's those tiny little Whovilles everywhere.
It's wild, wild. Yeah. And then I was thinking, I wonder if there's going to be like makeup that comes out that's like mascara, like, probiotic mascara.
Well, they have, I mean, you can see there's probiotic and prebiotic skincare too, right? I mean, acne washes. I mean, there's one acne product on the market that is fascinating. I'm getting really good results with it, but it actually has it's they're called phages. So phages, phage, phages are actually viruses that grew up with probiotics evolutionarily within us, and they target very specific bacteria. So we know that there actually is a phage on the market that targets specifically E. coli. So for women who get E. coli UTIs over and over and over again, well, one of the potential, treatment options is to take this prebiotic. I mean, it's sort of like not a prebiotic, but a phage that targets the E. coli in your gut so that gets, wiped out without destroying the rest of your microbiome because it only targets the bad E. coli. So there's this phage serum on the market now that targets only the bacteria called Cutibacterium acnes that causes acne. And
Wow.
yeah, without stripping away
Yeah.
the rest of your skin
Yeah.
microbiome.
Yeah. Can you plug that product for the for the listeners if they want
I,
it?
I can. Yeah, I have nothing to do with it, right? But it's but I do love the product. It's called Phyla, Phyla, Phyla. And I just got notification that they used to only sell online, but they're actually a Sephora now.
Wow.
And then for your babies with eczema, there's a skincare product that has a postbiotic in it,
Ooh.
right? A postbiotic are your beneficial byproducts when, like your probiotic, let's say sauerkraut, when the probiotics munch on the cabbage, then those postbiotics are all the beneficial compounds that are created that are probably why fermented foods are so good for us, much more than the
Hmm.
probiotic content. And postbiotics include things like butyrate, short chain fatty acid called butyrate. They include vitamin B12, vitamin K, folate. It includes our neurotransmitters like GABA and serotonin. These are all postbiotics. And so
Hmm.
there's a skincare line developed by a pediatric allergist in Chicago. It's called Yobi. I don't know if you've heard of Yobi,
No.
Yobee. But
Okay.
Yobi has Manuka honey in it, which
Nice.
supports the growth of healthy skin bacteria while wiping out things like staph and strep that
Yep.
shouldn't be in the skin, right? And it has I think some coconut oil and this special postbiotic. So anyhow, I mean, it's fascinating what we can think of, create when we understand how our microbiome works. And instead of, as you said, blasting the rainforest of our
Yeah.
microbiome with antibiotics, support our microbiomes in a different way.
Yeah. I love that. That's so interesting. And I actually am using Manuka honey on my skin right now to get rid of the staph. It's like a tallow-based
Yeah.
grass-fed tallow. It's got Manuka honey in it. And it's great. It's been working very, very well. Um, I I want to shift gears quickly before we wrap up about the measles outbreak that is happening in the US that a couple of my followers brought to light. I'm in Canada, so I kind of don't always get all the news that's happening in the US, but this is mostly happening in Texas and New Jersey. And I'm curious why you think this might be happening. What are the multiple factors and what would even be your approach if someone came to you with measles?
So, I mean, measles is probably the most highly contagious virus that we know of, right? I mean, more than COVID. I mean, it can spread like wildfire, which is what we're seeing now,
Yeah.
right? And the contact can be, very casual. And so I think that's where we see when we do have a case or a couple of cases, why then in those pockets it tends to spread so quickly, right? Um, Now, I mean, for the vast majority of kids, measles is going to be, a cold-like illness with a fever, and then they get the pink eyes and the rash, right? So it looks a little different, but it's tends to be what's called self-limited.
Mm.
I think that the kids who, I mean, this is my conjecture, that kids who have microbiome disruption to begin with, and their immune system is not responding normally, maybe the ones who are more at risk for having more serious outcomes because we know it's a rare complication, but measles can cause brain inflammation and cause encephalitis. And that's what I worry about with measles. When I was a resident, I did see a child with measles-induced SSPE, subacute sclerosing panencephalitis, which I mean, it sounds scary, and it is scary, right? Basically,
Wow.
the whole brain, pan means entire, right? The whole brain becomes inflamed, and so now on the flip side, that same rare complication can sadly also occur from the vaccine. So then we
Yeah.
have parents who are like, "Oh, what's?" So I have to weigh them. Mm, when there's not really much measles going around, perhaps when you think about it, that rare complication could be more likely from the vaccine. But when now there's a whole, cluster of cases around you, is your potential risk higher from the getting the infection? I mean, it's not. It's such a um, it's not an easy issue, and it's something that
Yeah.
I walk patients through
Yeah.
carefully, right? Because, I want to know, what is your family history of neurodevelopmental conditions? What is your family history of autoimmunity? Are there other family members with a prior reaction to vaccines? And if you choose to do any vaccines, I want to support you with supporting methylation and mitochondria and detoxification and healthy immune response. We know from many studies that a healthy microbiome is linked with healthier responses to vaccines. So getting more effective response, and also hopefully fewer adverse
Right.
responses, right? So it's still the foundation. Now it's interesting that, are there, there are no conventional treatments for measles. It's a virus, right? We don't have a good antiviral for the measles virus.
Yeah.
Um, the World Health Organization does have a high dose vitamin A protocol, which many listeners have probably been reading about, right?
Hmm.
In areas of the world where vitamin A deficiency is common, high dose vitamin A, over 2 days has been found to be helpful in treating, getting rid of measles. So are most kids in the United States and Canada, are they deficient in vitamin A? Hard to say, because it's definitely not something that's routinely
Yeah.
tested, right?
Yeah.
Um, but I have put kids on high dose vitamin A protocols for
Mm.
either measles exposure or other viruses, other viral exposure. And I do think it can be very helpful. And so there are some options. We don't have to feel like, oh my gosh, we're just sitting ducks here,
Yeah.
right? Support your microbiome, do all the things that are and supporting your microbiome doesn't just mean taking a probiotic. It
Yeah.
means right? It means making sure that your diet and lifestyle is really a gut friendly diet and lifestyle. I
Mm.
mean, it's a whole package, right?
Yeah.
So supporting your microbiome, um, taking extra vitamin A. I mean, if I were living in Texas right now or New Jersey, I would have my kids on extra vitamin A on top of what they're getting, in a general multi, right?
Right.
Yeah. And for sure, I want to optimize vitamin D, because vitamin D is so important for response against infections. And I would want to get some antioxidants on board, like glutathione, our master antioxidant that's going to help with viral infections. Now, I was doing some preliminary literature on, are there any herbs that could be helpful, that have been shown to fight measles in vitro, like in the test tube. I mean, there's not going to be a clinical trial, I'm sure.
Yeah.
And, I haven't come across any in the literature. It doesn't mean that there's none that are effective. It just means that it wasn't studied, right?
Yeah.
Which, I mean, there's, what's the incentive to study that, really, when you think about it, right?
Yeah.
But it is a virus. So whatever you use typically for viruses, like oil of oregano, olive leaf extract, I use Pelargonium pseudoides, which is in
Yeah.
Umca or V-Clear. That is my go-to for any virus, and
Nice.
found to have such amazing in vitro and clinical efficacy against, I mean, almost all the viruses that your kids are going to be exposed to, and even some against staph and strep,
Yeah.
right? Now, did they specifically look at it against measles? No, but why not? Why not do what we
Yeah.
can? The only thing I would counsel families on is to have a plan, like think out beforehand. If you're in Texas, if you're in New Jersey, or wherever you are, you want to think about a plan of what you're going to do to support your child. And if your child isn't vaccinated, what your decision is going to be if the epidemic, starts, or whatever, these outbreaks start to move a little closer, because I don't want any parents making their decisions on fear and in the moment, like, oh my gosh, we have to do something, right? Just think through what you will do, right? Because I have, and it is something that, for the measles vaccine can be effective even up to 72 hours after exposure. So, it is something you can do after, wait and see if things come closer to you. But again, like having a talk with your partner about that beforehand and being prepared. If you decide, my child's not vaccinated yet, but if the measles outbreak moves closer to us, I think we will, get the vaccine. Then I might start on supportive supplements right now, which anyway is going to help support your child's immune system.
Yeah. I love that. It's a very proactive approach and a preventative approach for side effects or, negative consequences of not being prepared, really. Yeah. And I think that's what functional medicine and biohacking is really all about, is like, how do we be informed and be prepared and have the right supplements and the right food and the right things ready to go. Looking at herbs. And it's so funny, like so many of the things you're mentioning, I'm doing right now because I'm going through this like staff protocol to get it out of my body. So the good news is that there's resources out there, there's tests out there, and there's the right supplements and nutrition and protocols out there, and people like you who can help, which is amazing. So you're not alone going through this if you are living in Texas, or even if it's something else that you're dealing with. There are so many resources now that just are at your fingertips with the internet, which is a great place to be compared to, I guess, probably where we were about 30 years ago or so.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I mean, when I was starting, there really, podcasts were not a thing.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, even the internet, I'm going to date myself, but I got my first cell phone when I was a resident. Right. And even, it was not, I mean, the cell phones were not smartphones. They were just a means of getting phone calls. Right.
Yeah.
Right.
It was a phone. That's it.
It was a phone. It was a phone. And pagers were these huge devices that we had to carry around. And so we've come a long way. There's an explosion of information, which is good. I mean, it allows parents to be more proactive and informed. But it also can be scary. There's information overload, and it can be hard to know what information to trust. And so, I mean, I personally, I don't watch the news. Yeah. I have an Instagram account. I post occasionally, but I don't scroll. I'm like, there's nothing, you come away just shocked or dismayed or whatever. Right. I'm like, but take the time to do your own research and not really trying to be as neutral as possible. 'Cause again, that fear can have you make decisions that you might otherwise regret later on.
And cause a lot of stress for yourself. Yeah, absolutely. If people want to work with you or connect with you, where can they do that? And how can they also find your book, Healthy Kids, Happy Kids, if they want to get a copy?
Yeah. So you can find me most easily on my website. It's healthykidshappykids.com, and also on Instagram. It's healthykids_happykids. I just said I don't do much Instagram, but I do post on Instagram. And I always, my strategy around posting, because you'll see I don't post that often, I only post when I think, is this something that if I read as a busy mom, I would feel like it was worth my time.
Cool. Right? I love that.
Whether it's for a laugh or whether it's for solid information, right? Nice. But I mean, I don't want fluff in my life, right? Yeah. So I don't want to give you guys fluff. So there. And then the book, you can find the book pretty much anywhere books are sold. I mean, what they say, the vast majority of people get their books on Amazon. So Amazon Canada, Amazon US. It's available in the UK and Australia and New Zealand. It should soon be available in China. We're trying to get it translated into Spanish. So it'd be very, very cool.
That's very exciting. Amazing. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show today. I love just diving into the microbiome with you. And I feel like I just learned so much. And I know my listeners definitely learned a lot as well.
Well, thanks for having me.
Thanks for tuning in to Biohacking with Brittany. If you love this episode, make sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone on their own wellness journey. Stay connected with me on Instagram at biohackingbrittany for more on high performance health, non-toxic living, and the latest in biohacking. Until next time, keep striving for your healthiest, most vibrant self.